The aircraft bucked violently. Inside, 38 passengers and a veteran crew were suddenly plunged into an abyss of darkness and chaos. Alarms shrieked. Engines, moments ago a roaring symphony of power, fell silent. This wasn't turbulence. This was total system failure. A brand new Boeing 737, 30,000 feet above the Gulf of Mexico, had become a 43-ton glider. In the cockpit, a voice crackled over the radio. "Mayday! Mayday! We've lost both engines." It was May 24, 1988. A small, family-owned airline, known for its impeccable safety record, had just taken delivery of its newest jewel, a cutting-edge Boeing 737-300. This wasn't just any new plane. It was the latest iteration of the world's most successful twin-engine jetliner, boasting advanced aerodynamics and powerful engines. For the airline, based in El Salvador, this acquisition was a momentous occasion, a symbol of progress and ambition. The flight, bound for New Orleans from Belize City, began under a clear azure sky. On board was a seasoned crew, including First Officer Ramirez, an experienced aviator with over 12,000 flight hours. Overseeing the flight was Captain Morales, a third-generation pilot whose passion for the skies had seen him overcome incredible personal adversity. 6 years prior, caught in the crossfire of El Salvador's civil war while flying an air taxi, he'd been shot in the face, losing his left eye. Despite this, his unwavering determination propelled him back into the cockpit, earning him certification as a commercial pilot. Also on board was flight instructor Miller, there to observe the performance of the new aircraft. Among the passengers was Elena, recovering from an emergency appendectomy in a remote village, yearning for the comfort of home. This was meant to be a routine, celebratory journey. As the 737 soared over the Gulf of Mexico, the serene blue gave way to an ominous, inky blackness. May in this region meant unpredictable weather, and violent storms could materialize in minutes. The crew, relying on the aircraft's onboard radar, meticulously tracked the weather. But technology, however advanced, has its limits. Airborne radar, operating on an X-band wavelength, often struggles to detect hail, only showing it as benign green or yellow, not the menacing red core of a severe thunderstorm. Unbeknownst to the pilots, they were heading straight into a tempest of unprecedented ferocity. Around 50 kilometers from New Orleans, the plane began its final descent. Without warning, the aircraft slammed into what felt like an invisible wall. The cabin was rattled by severe turbulence, punctuated by loud thuds as ice pelted the fuselage. Lightning flashed, illuminating a scene of utter chaos. Cabin attendants were quickly ordered to their seats. Then, at just under 17,000 feet, the unthinkable happened. A sudden, jarring silence enveloped the aircraft. All the lights flickered and died. The cockpit, once a vibrant array of illuminated instruments, went black. Alarms blared a cacophony of distress. Captain Morales instinctively pushed the throttles, desperate to restore power, but the engines offered no response. "I've lost power on the engines," he declared. "Both engines." The state-of-the-art jet, just moments ago a symbol of modern engineering, was now a 43-ton glider, rapidly losing altitude. No power meant no electricity for the critical onboard systems. In the New Orleans control tower, Flight 110 vanished from radar screens. "Flight 110, approach, say altitude." "Flight 110, this is New Orleans approach control, how do you hear?" Silence. Communication was impossible. Inside the cabin, the eerie quiet was deafening, broken only by the relentless drumming of hail against the hull. Passengers looked at each other, their faces etched with fear. Elena, still recovering from surgery, could only brace herself. The 737 was dropping at 1,500 feet per minute. Without engine power, a restart seemed impossible. Captain Morales and First Officer Ramirez knew they were in a race against time. The altimeter and attitude indicator, powered by backup batteries, were their only guides, but even these would be useless if they couldn't find a place to land. Their primary hope lay in the Auxiliary Power Unit, or APU, an emergency generator designed to provide vital systems with power. But starting the APU took precious time, and with every passing second, the aircraft plummeted closer to the churning waters of the Gulf. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the APU sputtered to life. Lights flickered back on, bringing a momentary surge of relief. But this was only a partial victory. The engines, the mighty turbofans, remained stubbornly dormant. The crew initiated the complex procedure for a complete engine restart, a process that typically took around 30 agonizing seconds.
Mayday, Mayday, T110. Captain Morales' voice cut through the emergency frequency. We are in the middle of a storm, sir. We need vectors to the runway now. We lost both engines, sir. Both engines. The controller, now aware of the gravity of the situation, directed them to Navy Calendar Runway, a U.S. naval base 27 kilometers away, a shorter, more immediate option than New Orleans' main airport. But even that was too far if the engines remained dead.
At just 5,000 feet, a miracle. The left engine roared back to life. "Good job," Captain Morales urged. "Start working on the other one." The plane could fly with one engine, but two were essential, especially in this weather. Soon after, the right engine also ignited. Relief washed over the cockpit. "Sir, we have both engines back now," Morales informed ATC. "We really appreciate what you've done for us." But their reprieve was tragically short-lived. A chilling observation. The engines, though running, felt like they weren't producing full thrust. The gauges confirmed it. They were overheating, burning from the inside. The risk of a catastrophic engine fire was immediate. Captain Morales faced an agonizing decision no pilot ever wants to make. He had to shut down both engines for good. Once again, the cabin was plunged into a desperate silence. The pilots knew there was no possibility of another restart. The plane was once again a powerless glider, falling fast, now closing in on 3,000 feet. The prospect of reaching any airport was gone. Visibility improved slightly as the plane broke through the lowest storm clouds, but rain still lashed against the windows. Captain Morales had less than 3 minutes to find a place to put down a 737. Below, the landscape was a daunting maze of swampy land, canals, and lakes, protected by the formidable levees of New Orleans. This was no place for a jetliner. "We don't have power on the engines," Morales radioed. The controller, desperate, offered Lakefront Airport, just 11 miles away. "I don't think I will make it," Morales replied, his voice strained. "I don't have any power in the engines. We're going to declare an emergency. We're going to have to decide where to put this thing." The controller suggested an interstate highway 7 miles ahead. It was a tempting, albeit terrifying, option. Years earlier, a similar emergency had forced a plane onto a Georgia highway, resulting in multiple fatalities on the ground and on board. Captain Morales, remembering this tragedy, flatly refused. "No way I'm going to try to land on the highway, because we'll kill many more people." That was not our option, really. At 2,000 feet, rapidly losing altitude, only one horrific option remained: a ditching. "I guess I'm going to have to make a ditching here, sir," Morales communicated, confirming the worst. The Coast Guard was immediately dispatched. The crew prepared for a water landing in the canal directly ahead. Panic began to set in amongst the passengers. Elena, her surgical stitches still fresh, was forced to assume the crash position, a difficult and painful maneuver. Flight attendants gave last-second instructions: remove shoes, take off jewelry, put items under seats. Just as Captain Morales was committing to the canal, First Officer Ramirez spotted it: a narrow, grassy levee running parallel to the canal. Look at that one over there," he exclaimed. "The levee parallel to the canal that we were making the approach on." It was a ridiculously short and narrow strip of land, designed to protect against flooding, not to land a 737. But it was dry ground. "We put it on the grass, yes, boss," Morales responded, a surge of adrenaline replacing despair. They had to act fast. To align with the levee, Captain Morales had to execute an extreme maneuver, a side slip. This was a technique typically reserved for small planes and gliders, not a 43-ton commercial jet. But with only 700 feet separating them from the ground, it was the only way. With one eye, Captain Morales faced an immense challenge, judging depth as he rapidly approached the rain-soaked strip. He knew there was a high cement wall at the end of the levee and a steep embankment on the left. The margin for error was non-existent. He touched down. The impact was hard, throwing passengers against their seatbelts. On the soggy grass, the plane was in danger of skidding into the water. Morales fought for control, using spoilers to slow the plane, avoiding the brakes to prevent a catastrophic spin. Very good, very good, Charlie," Ramirez yelled, celebrating. It was a bumpy, terrifying ride, but they stayed on the levee. The plane came to a halt. "We made it," someone cried. When passengers looked out their windows, they saw no fire, no explosion, only green grass. The evacuation was swift and orderly. Slides deployed and passengers scrambled to safety. Elena, with her recent surgery, was helped down, her stitches checked by nurses who had been on the flight. Miraculously, there were no major injuries. The New Orleans control tower, still unaware of Flight 110's fate, heard from another aircraft. Kilopapa to 6. Everything looks okay. Looks like he did a pretty good job. You're not going to believe where they are. For the first time in history, a Boeing 737, completely without engines, had landed safely outside of an airport. The aircraft had touched down on NASA property, the Michoud facility, where parts for the space shuttle were manufactured. An ambulance arrived quickly for Elena, taking her to a local hospital, but her condition was stable. The relief was immense. They were alive. Within hours, investigators swarmed the scene. The sight of a perfectly intact 737 resting on a grassy levee was almost unbelievable. Their immediate task, to understand why the sophisticated CFM56 engines, among the most advanced and reliable on Earth, had failed in mid-flight. Pilots call this a dead stick landing, and 2 engine failures on a 737 were practically an infinitesimal possibility. Captain Morales recounted the moment. Both engines flamed out simultaneously as they descended through 16,500 feet. The investigators focused on the severe weather conditions. Could the environment have caused this? The winds were fierce. There was so much rain and hail we could barely see out the window, Morales described. Fuselage dents confirmed hail nearly an inch in diameter had battered the aircraft. While engines are designed to withstand heavy rain, hail presented a different challenge. The CFM56 engines were engineered to divert water away from their core. Any water that entered was supposed to evaporate or drain. But what about hail? Hailstones, forming in multiple layers of ice, had never been considered a significant factor for the engine's internal core. Investigators hypothesized that smaller hailstones, bypassing the fan blades, might have accumulated deep inside the engine, where they would melt, creating a massive influx of water. The engines were sent to a GE test facility in Ohio, where engineers attempted to recreate the conditions. Initial water ingestion tests, following standard FAA protocols, failed to produce an engine flameout. The engine continued to run, even with massive amounts of water sprayed into it. Something else should happen, the investigators concluded. They meticulously studied all available data on the storm and the flight recorder. A critical piece of information emerged. Just before the flameout, the engine power had been reduced to 35%. The crew had been on final descent to New Orleans, and the engines were automatically set to a lower power to slow the aircraft. This was the aha moment. All previous tests had been conducted at high engine power settings. What happened when the same amount of water, simulating the melting hail, was ingested at a reduced power setting? The results were completely different. At lower speeds, the engine's ability to handle water was significantly diminished. The hail, with its distinct velocity and momentum, could find openings between the fan blades, directly entering the core. The combined effect of excess water from melting hail and the engine operating at a lower, less resilient power setting caused the engines to flame out. With the flameout explained, one last mystery remained. Why did the engines overheat and burn up after the crew had successfully restarted them? The flight data recorder provided the answer. When the engines flamed out, they stopped spinning, meaning they stopped ingesting air and water. But when Captain Morales initiated the emergency restart, his engines were still flooded. If the balance of fuel to air isn't perfect during a restart, especially with excess water present, it can cause a hot start. Too much fuel, not enough air, and the flame migrates into the turbine section, causing it to overheat and melt. In the urgency of the moment, with the plane plummeting, Captain Morales had no time to allow the engines to properly drain.
This near catastrophe became a pivotal moment in aviation safety. Engineers swiftly redesigned the CFM56 engine. The shape of the engine nose cone and the spacing of the fan blades were modified to better deflect hail. Additional bleed doors were added to drain more water from the engine. Within a year, all 737-300s worldwide were retrofitted with these upgrades. The very plane involved in the incident was back in service within a month after replacing the damaged right engine. The crew's extraordinary actions on that day became legendary in the aviation world. Captain Morales' calm nerves, his refusal to land on a highway to save lives on the ground, and his daring decision to attempt a landing on the narrow NASA levee were hailed as superlative. His courage, despite his own impaired vision, averted what could have been a catastrophic disaster. Of the Flight 110 stands as a testament to human resilience and ingenuity. It highlights how an extreme weather event can push even the most advanced technology to its limits, but also how quick thinking and unwavering dedication in the face of impossible odds can turn potential tragedy into a profound lesson for the future of aviation. thousands of CFM56 engines continue to fly daily, their enhanced safety a silent tribute to the lives saved and the lessons learned that fateful day over New Orleans.